Welcome to the fifth of our weekly conversations entitled In Dialogue with My President. Tonight, we go underground to the soil that carries our country's inheritance. And we lift our eyes to a larger truth. The wealth our God has placed beneath our feet in great plenty is the very wealth the whole world is about to need. Good evening, Your Excellency, President Hakainde Hichilema. Good evening, my fellow Zambians. Tonight, we speak of the metal that is the country's first inheritance. We speak of mining and shared prosperity. And we also speak of the difference between the two. Mr. President, the copper numbers are now telling a story the country has not heard in 20 years. Production reached over 890,000 tons in 2025. This is a rise of 8%. The target for next year is more than 1 million tons. The target for 2031 is 3 million. Konkola has come back to life, its output multiplying many times over. Mopani has come back with the output up by about 40%. The Kansanshi expansion, more than $1 billion, has begun production. More than $12 billion of mining investment has been attracted under your administration, Mr. President. New mining laws were signed in June last year, and the rule now requires that a growing share of every mine supplies be bought from Zambians. This will rise over the next 3 years. The country owes you and your team an honest recognition of what has been put in motion, Your Excellency. But here lies the larger truth, Mr. President, and it is good news. The world is now running short of the very things our soils hoard in plenty. The metal of the new age, the age of clean power, is copper, and beneath it, cobalt and more, and we are sitting on it. The forests the world needs to keep the air fit to breathe, we have them in abundance. What God has placed in our ground is not of lesser value than the value of financial capital or other forms of capital. In the world we are walking into, it is becoming the greater thing. That should change how we stand when we meet the world. And yet a child on the copper belt, Mr. President, watches the lorry pass and asks the same question her grandmother asked: where does it all go? The deepest question of mining is not how much we dig. It is who the digging is for. Development is not measured in tons. It is measured in what the ton does finally to the child, what it finally pays for in the life of a child. Two voices, Mr. President. They will not speak. You and I will listen. The first is Yoyo Kawana, an artisanal miner in Mufumbwe. Last year, you may recall, about 25,000 people converged on a gold rush at Kakawa. In June, a tunnel collapsed and miners died. In the days that followed, there were more deaths during the clearance. Yoyo walked away with empty hands back to her village. The government has since formalized licenses for some cooperatives. She was not on the list. She is asking what shared prosperity in her situation means. The second is Chimuka Habenzu, a young woman with a degree in mineral engineering from the Copperbelt University. She has applied to 11 mining companies in 6 months, 2 interviews. They tell her she lacks experience. She tells them she would have the experience if they gave her a job. She is the future of Zambian mining. Mr. President, we are not the first country to stand where we stand today. Allow me to remind you of 3 countries who took what God placed in their ground and turned it into the good of their people. I begin with our neighbor, Botswana. At independence, it was among the poorest countries on earth, with almost no tarred road. Then it found diamonds. But here is the wise part. Botswana did not simply let a foreign company dig and carry the diamonds away. It formed a partnership and took half of that company for the nation, an equal partner at the table. For every $100 its diamonds earn, about 80 stays in Botswana. It even moved the great house where the world's rough diamonds are sorted and sold, all the way from London to its own capital. It saved some of the money in a national port for the lean years, and it paid for free schooling and for clinics. Now, Your Excellency, let's travel to Indonesia. It has a metal called nickel, which the new age needs for its batteries. For years, Indonesia dug up the raw rock and shipped it away cheaply, and others grew rich cleaning it and using it. Then Indonesia said, no more. If you want our nickel, build the factory here and clean and finish the metal on our own soil. Dug up and shipped away, the rock fetched only a few dollars. Cleaned and made ready at home, the same metal fetched thousands. In only 3 years, the money its nickel earned grew more than 20 times over. It was not perfect. Much of the factory is still owned by others, and the work has polluted some of its rivers and its air. But the lesson still stands. Do not sell the raw rock cheaply when you can add value at home. Last, a small country called Costa Rica, which shows that minerals are not the only wealth in the ground. Costa Rica was once cutting down its forests so fast that the trees covered only 40 parts in every 100 of the land. Then the country chose to see the standing forest as treasure. From a small charge on fuel, it began to pay its own farmers so that they could keep the trees standing and to plant more. The forest grew back to about 57 parts in every 100 today. And now, the living forest earns money for the country because visitors come from across the world to walk in it. And that alone is about 8 parts in every 100 of all that the country earns. A tree left standing turned out to be worth more than a tree that is cut down. Clean air and living forests are wealth too. These 3 countries learned one thing, Mr. President, and it is the thing I most want to place in your heart and in the heart of every Zambian leader and citizen. What God has placed in our ground is not a small thing. In the world we are now entering, it is becoming the greater thing. The world is running short of the very metals our soils hold in plenty, the copper and the cobalt, on which the new age of clean power is built. And it needs forests that are left standing to keep the air fit for breathing. So, we do not come to the world with a begging bowl in our hand. We come holding the key. A man with a well in a season of drought does not go begging those who are thirsty for water. The thirsty come to him, and they come as guests, not as masters. We are not the horse, and the world is not the rider. We are a partner, and we invite the world to partner with us in the true sense of the word. This is what will allow genuine and real value to come to our people. So, what would that look like at home, Mr. President? Not on paper, but in the life of a child. It would mean Zambia owning a true part of its own mines, the way Botswana owns half of its diamonds. A part that does not merely sit in a report, but pays for the borehole at that school in Muflira. It would mean cleaning and finishing more of our copper here in Zambian factories by Zambian hands, the way Indonesia finishes its nickel, so that the worth is added on our soil and not carried away as raw rock. And it would mean saving part of the earnings for the children not yet born, the way Botswana saved, so that when the copper price falls, as one day it surely will, the country does not fall with it. It would mean seeing our forests among the most forested lands in all of Africa, not as firewood to be burnt down to nothing, but as wealth to be kept and being paid by the world to keep them standing, the way Costa Rica is paid. And above all, it would mean you, our leaders, walking into every room with the word, not as the hired hand, but as the owner of the field, the owner that is welcoming the guest, and certain that what is in our ground is a key to the future the whole world is walking into. That is shared prosperity in action, and not merely on paper. Mr. President, as a man of the scripture, you know that when God gave the law for the harvest, he gave a law about the ages of the field. In the book of Leviticus, it is written, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. The owner of the field did not own all of it. By the design of heaven, the corners belonged to the landless, to the widow, to the one with no field of his own. And we see it lived out in the story of Ruth, the foreign widow with nothing who went to glean in the field of Boaz. Boaz did not merely tolerate her at the edges. He told his young men to let grain from the bundles fall purposely to her and leave it, and let no one shame her. He bent his own harvest deliberately so that the poor woman could gather with dignity. That is what shared prosperity looks like in Scripture. Not a gift handed down, a harvest deliberately arranged so that the landless can gather from it with their heads held high. This, again, is part of the leadership responsibility that Jesus gave to Simon Peter. feed my sheep, all of them, not only the ones who own the field. The copper is our national harvest, Mr. President, as you know, and that's why you have been working in the manner that you have been working. And so are our forests and our clean air. The question remains, where are the edges left unreaped for the retrenched miners, for the woman in Mufumbwe, for the young engineer with no field of her own? Here is the invitation, Your Excellency. The copper boom is not yours alone. It belongs to the miner who returned to Mopani, to the artisanal woman in Mufumbwe, to the engineer from the Copperbelt University still looking for her first job, to the smelter operator in Chambeshi, to the truck driver on the Lobito corridor. When you sit with mining companies and with the world, Mr. President, sit as a partner and not as the ridden horse. Let our leaders carry into every negotiation the quiet confidence of a people who know what they hold. What God placed in our ground is a key to the world's future, and therefore some real value must come home to the woman in Mufumbwe and the child in Chingola. Mr. President, visit the family of every artisanal miner who has died on your watch, not only the cooperatives that received the licenses, the ones who did not, the mothers who buried sons without a state ceremony. The least seen are the test of the leader. Allow yourself to be tested, Mr. President. The country will rise with you when it sees you stoop. And therefore, before the pause, name the dividend the citizen will receive from the 1 million tons, not in macroeconomic language, in a number a child can understand. Your Excellency, permit me to leave you with some questions to take to your sleep. What does an ordinary Zambian receive from a ton of copper? Do we treat what God placed in our ground as something smaller than the money foreigners purport to bring, or as a key to the future the whole world is walking into? When Zambia sits with the world, do we come as the hired hand or as the owner of the field welcoming a guest? What is the citizen's dividend in numbers a child can understand? Until next week, when we will speak of corruption and equal justice, hold these with me, Your Excellency. May we choose to share the credit. May we choose to honor the unseen. May we choose the long view and save the good years for the children not yet born. May we see the wealth in our ground as God-given, a key to the future, never as something second to money or other forms of capital. May we remember that the mining future is not the presidents alone, nor the multinationals alone, but the project of one Zambia, one nation, with the woman of Mufumbwe at the same table as the boardroom in Lusaka, and the world invited as a partner, not a rider. May God hold this country with both hands. Good night, Your Excellency. Good night, Zambia.